right, people. Okay, so contagion. I'm going to tell you this much better, beautiful kind of story about how things spread on random networks. And then we will be set to kind of move into other things. And this will be the sort of last part, I think, where I want to give you an assignment. And projects can be April. Right? So it's good. So I know you've had a lot to contend with, so well done. But this is a really good foundation for what really exists in the network literature. And we're going to talk about some other fun things. I've tried to get all the slides online today, but I've got to do some more madness with the website, but it's coming along. Okay, so a bunch of little things to tell you. So there is some confusion in assignment 8 if you really read the Newman paper, this thing, in depth. His choices, which are fine because it's Newman, he can... Where is the thing? Let me try to enhance. Yeah, so that's the previous page probably. This sort of thing. So we have some different conventions. I mean, apart from the stories, tropes thing, right? This is movies and actors is sort of the story here. So here's M movies and N actors. But then somewhat confusingly, this is what we would call, this is very confusing. So this would be number of tropes, and this would be the number of movies each trope is in, average, the average number. So it should be N times mu, but the problem is this is N and mu is M, and this is, okay. I mean, I can see why I did, but a lot of things are flipped back and forth. So I've tried to make a little key for this, and maybe there'll be some help from you guys to see if it's right. Let's see, so where's the thing? It's quite detailed. I like the font awesome thing. Right? So here's the madness. So it should be okay, right? We've got stories and the little film thing and tropes and the little idea thing, and have movies, and he has subscript zeros and ones, right? And so these are kind of okay, but these then flip, right? So number of movies is M, but then the average of movies is a nu, so that's confusing. But the way I've written this is the number of affiliations each movie has, which is it's the number of tropes, right? And then these degree distributions, right? So it's P for stories, and then this guy, but that's a Q and a P, so they're around the other way. Yeah. So this, you have to kind of grit your teeth with this one, and then it kind of, so then there's F and G, which goes with P and Q, so they're in order, but they're kind of backwards the way I think it should be framed. Then this is F and G, it's the same order again, but then it goes the other way, so the capital F, capital G, capital F, capital G, right? So these are the induced distributions. When we project to them, they have a degree distribution, and then they have their R distributions, which is the number of other friends they have. But those guys are back to the order that I think, okay. So if you want to really read the paper, I mean, everything's sort of laid out. He's famous for writing very clearly, but there is some trickiness there. And Ryan helped me here because I got myself all tripped up with this. So these are now correct. But you can see if you think about what he's done, it's just a bit different. Okay. There was a little piece here that maybe I can show you. This is good. Lots of little web things to show you. Funny things that have happened. Yeah, this was kind of nice. So we had an office hours yesterday. So you could. This is for the bipartite affiliation thing, right? So generating these graphs where you have a Poisson degree distribution for whatever it is, the number of tropes associated with the story, and the other way around, right? So we're just sort of thinking about, this is one way you could realize the thing. You can use the stuff that's built into Network X or what it may be. I know it's not easy to work with, but is it all right, the Python one? Worked? Okay, MATLAB maybe not so good. Okay, so the Python thing is good. All right, good. Anyway, this is just another way to see this, and you shouldn't do it this way if you don't have to, but we could just sort of line them up like this, right? So here's the number of, in this case, sort of movies, if we're doing the Newman thing, movies and actors, right? Just list them in order. There were 10,000 and 100,000, I think were the things. So you could do what we've done for pure random networks, for Edish-Rennie random networks, but what we're going to do is occlude these things, right? Movies can't be connected to movies directly, and these guys can't be connected to each other directly either, right? Tropes. But then you just randomly allocate and you can just concentrate on one rectangle. Say you want, what was it? There were 15,000 edges, something like that. You just want to put them down randomly in here. And that will give you a Poisson degree distribution for the affiliations of movies and the affiliations of the other way. Okay. And then you could make the network. Just to see it in a different way. Yeah. Okay. So maybe that's why I did it. I mean, this is sort of an easy thing to make. Okay. Yes. There were some other little things here. All right, so that's good. Good. I mean, it's a fine, healthy problem set. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. We're over here. I'm trying to think about this. Okay, so yeah, all right. This is just the thing from last time, but I managed to, because I didn't record things, I think what I did was... Okay, so contagion. Whoa. More about contagion. Wow. I'm going to keep doing that. Sorry, guys. I'll have some silly little things to show us, but this thing got fixed, which was good. Man. Turns it. Okay. Wow. Well, they have volume in here. Someone turned it right up to the max. Wow, that's great. Let's save ourselves some pain later on. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, because, I didn't turn the thing on, right? So I put some of that Nantucket run in there. Why not? Yeah. Okay. I've had to do this before. A couple of years ago, I had running out to Juniper Island. Why is that on? Okay, I'm just going to stop this. It's madness. Juniper Island, because I messed up the recording. So I ended up putting running out to Juniper Island when it was frozen, right? The lake froze over, yeah, a couple of years ago. So I've done that a few times because it's there. It was terrifying, when you get to the thing, there was this huge, when I got there, it was this huge crack, So the video I have, you see me just like start running the other way immediately. And it's because, you're close to the shore, there's some stuff going on. Yeah, you never want to be on an iceberg that carves off into the sea. Anyway, cryolimnonautics, that was what that was, yeah, okay. Anyway, apparently that's never going to happen again. We did not have a frozen lake this time. So I made that a little bit of, it's the first 5 minutes. All right. There's a funny thing that's been happening with this stuff. People keep talking about it, and I don't know what's going on. So there's this website, Decaholic. I guess they have some nice things, and they sell cards. It's a nice site, right? Blah, blah, blah. So they want to feature it. I don't know. It's kind of weird, right? So, see? Some madness here with that. Anyway, so Decaholic. Anyway, so that's nice. It means I have to print them, which is confusing. Okay, what else can I tell you? There are things. Text on the website for links is now a nice shade of red. Oh yes, another very important update. Thank you very much. Let's go to that. That's not here. Yeah. Should be in here. Yeah, so a little bit of kind of a wine red. Went for that, yeah. Thought about the underlines, but we're okay. I looked up underlining links and you get Kottke. You want kottke.org, famous kind of early blogger. And it's like, Google does this. It gives you a 2002 article. I don't know, I'm constantly going to Google, searching for something, and then having to go to, like, in the last year. Like, does that happen a lot? Okay, I'd like to make that a default. All right. You can help me with my Googling. Advanced Googling. Like, not very advanced, but... I know there's little switches and stuff you can put to, but Yeah, it would be really tedious to switch that. Have to do that default. You put minus whatever, something. Yeah, so there you go. I'm into tedious nonsense. This is just completely irrelevant. What's this one? Did you say, now we're talking about contagion, right? So this is something that's spreading. Fun, the things that spread. They're fun, they're lightweight. I'm going to spread it a little more. So this turns out this guy is some kind of guru, like just a Wheel of Fortune savant, right? And he has been running a website where they discuss everything about Wheel of Fortune for a long time. So, and been compiling lists and kind of themes and all of the phrases and whatever. So, I mean, we could watch the film, but he just nails this straight away. I guess they put the ampersand in, right? They would give you that, yeah. Punctuation comes for free. And then, on that. Any guesses? Oh, you got it. I tried to hide that. Oh, so bad. Damn it. Okay, Port and Starboard, he's just like, and they're like, what? Because I think this is the first thing that he did, and then just crushes the rest of it. And by the end of it, that Pat guy is just like, what is? It's just and the other people are like, this is not so good. Milking it? I don't know. Here we go. The game. Good. I don't know. I'm not a Wheel of Fortune champion. But there's the risk, right? That you don't want to lose.
So every time you guess a letter successful, you get the amount that you spun.
Yeah.
The number of successful letters. So in that case, if you spun $400, you get a D.
Yeah.
$400.
Okay. Yeah.
So you have to.
So R would be 3 or something like that. Yeah.
But then there are also lose and turn skills.
Right, and bankrupt.
Yeah. So you have to
Dangerous. Yeah.
guessing between these letters. So if you get one letter and solve it every time.
Yeah.
You just keep spinning that cycle around. Theoretically, you can win a lot of money.
But it is dangerous because you can, yeah. But they know the strategy. Like these guys have figured this out, right? They have. Sorry.
It's not like Jeopardy, right? Like you have this one shot.
Yeah, and then you own that thing. So he just destroys it. There's a video you can watch, I think maybe these have been taken off. If you look up, Wheel of Fortune fails, there are some pretty spectacular fails, and one of them was. Oh, that was good, right? I just watched that one. I was trying to find some really good, because you have to actually read it out. It's all spelled out, and he said Achilles or something, and they're like, no. There's another one with, what's his name? Rebus? What's that guy's name? This is the problem that I'm having right now. What is it? Pullman? Regis Philbin? See, I would have failed it. Regis Philbin and Kelly Ripa, right? So the problem is they guess it about 10 times. It's these military guys, and they're saying Ripa. They just keep getting it wrong. It's all spelled out, and they're like, nope. Anyway, that was embarrassing. One was I think magic something AND. Right, so it's magic and then something AND, and this was like to win a car, so they did really well getting the letters, and then it starts running, and everyone's like, oh, it's gimme, and they're like. The person's like, just can't do it, can't do it. Oh boy. Anyway, so there's that side, and then there's this sort of crazy, So they tend to get on YouTube and get sent around, which is interesting, right? The sort of the kind of spooky success ones, and then the just utter abject failures. People are going to spread those. Anyway, we've talked a lot about spreading. What's this one? Oh yeah, this one, I was just trying to find some more. I'll just tell you what happened. So they guess it, and it's a husband and wife. They get the right thing, and then the guy says, little geography test, do you know where you're going? Which is always dangerous with particularly Americans. And the guy just blurts out, Paris. And then he says, oh, no, France. I think he said, which country are you going to? And he said, Paris. And then realizes that's wrong, and then says France, and his wife's like, anyway. Yes, that was a good one. The Iraq. Yeah, that was tough. That was tough. That was pretty tough because that's sort of like just too bad in a way. But it got a lot of press. Anyway, more of those. So I looked some of those up, but you can find them. Anyway, these things spread well. This is completely random, but here you go. This is a great moment for Safari users in that this bug has been fixed. So it turns out that if you have a capitalized, right, the giant capitalized first letter, the first line would get it wrong. So 9.1.1 nails that problem. It's just funny to see people tweeting about these sorts of things. Okay, so this is a more serious, sad note. The two Ronnies, I know you've heard of the two Ronnies. Yes? Vaguely? I mean, this is from the 70s, BBC, pretty low budget stuff. Like Monty Python was high budget compared to these. It's just two guys. Ronnie Corbett on the right and Ronnie Barker. And Ronnie Corbett just passed away. Ronnie Barker died quite a while ago, I think. Anyway, so this is pretty funny. Can you hear this? This is the thing. All right. Anyway, they were very funny, and it was sort of a different time, right? There's no swearing. It's just kind of clever, and these are it's crosswords, so it's a great thing. And he's got the cryptic Mephistopheles from the Financial Times, which is really nice crosswords. Yeah. I'm always excited to get the salmon-colored paper and get hold of the Financial Times. There's also a great one on the weekend, which is polymath. That's a hard one for any individual to do. It is polymath, so it's incredibly broad, and there are no clues like entrance to a mine, which is at it, right? I mean, these sort of standard kind of crossword clues. It's full of really detailed, interesting things. Anyway, that's a good one. That's on the weekend. Yeah, the two Ronnies. Oh boy, let's check the cricket. This is important. And the West Indies won. This is gigantic. Wow, they just beat India in the semi-finals, World T20. Wow.
When I left the library, they needed like 60 off the 30 or something.
This is old school West Indies. 6-4-6, just bashing it to pieces. I know you're all big fans. And they won with 2 balls to go. Well, that's good. They've had trouble over the years. Okay, so we've done this. Sorry, I'm just giving you extra things. Yeah, I think we're good. Wow, that's great. Virat Kohli's innings was in vain, obviously. Yeah, okay, right. Cricket is great. Okay, so I think we're good to start on some other things. And they will be playing England, who tragically are actually kind of good. It's very disappointing. Okay, so we're going to do this thing where we figure out the final steps. Actually, we'll figure out the whole dynamics of these spreading things. It won't be just threshold. It will be any kind of contagion on random networks. And it can be generalized in lots of ways to modular kinds of networks and all sorts of other things, as long as there's a good dose of randomness in it. Obviously, bipartite structures, which we know have lots of structure. So you can do all that as well. But we'll get this great story out. And as I said, it started in 2007. The first part of this appeared in 2007. Very difficult. Okay, so this is a problem. We sometimes have situations where you've got a contagion, a very natural thing. We need 2 or more hits from the outside. We're not even talking about doses or anything like that. And so these are the 2 main papers. There are more that came after it, but yeah, James Gleason, beautiful work. And he is, at Limerick, University of Limerick. Okay, we talked about that thing. Okay. All right, let's understand how this works. This is a tricky business. We're going to walk through it slowly. I have some pictures to talk about. Yes, good. So, instead of 1 node at a time, infinite random network, which is this kind of painful aspect, we're going to switch on some fraction. So it's a sprinkling, random. They're randomly being turned on, and we'll imagine they have, this is generally a fairly small quantity. Again, with the whole local branching business, very important. Random networks do this. And now we're going to think about what has to happen at time t for this one node. There's a node there. We're going to look at it. What has to happen so that it first switches on at time t, when it first switches on. It's also a system where once you switch on, you're on, right? That's important. Can be relaxed, but that is trickier. So we'll just step through it. So t equals 0. It can be on then if it's one of these exogenously turned on nodes, right? Fair enough. So there's just some straight up probability here, this phi 0, and we're calling it phi 0 because phi is going to be the fraction of nodes that are on. At phi of t will be the fraction of nodes that are on phi at time t, or the nth time, we'll say t. All right, so we've set that. T equals 1, and I'll have a picture. T equals 1 means that an I is turned on for the first time, means that it's something to do with its neighbors, right? Its neighbors had to be on in that first time step. And it can't be anything about nodes that are 2 hops away or 3 hops away. They haven't been able to propagate, right? Their effect hasn't been able to propagate. So it has to be just about that. It also has to have failed in the first time step to turn on, which is simply 1 minus phi 0. So we have that, right? So it has to fail to turn on. And then it has to be about just that first ring. And I know I'll show you these pictures again, but I didn't talk about this properly last time. T equals 2, it has to be your friends and your friends of friends, right? So it's not just the 2 steps away, it's everyone who's 1 and 2 steps away. They cumulatively affect your situation. And then generally, when we get to n, again, I'll have some pictures, these are words. Everyone who's within n hops of you, and this is going to be a branching structure locally, so it's all very nice, branching, there's no little loops in there. They all have an effect on you. So phi of n will have to depend on all of those things. Yep. And they were switched on at time 0, and then the effects may or may not have propagated. All right, this is a nice picture. Okay, we've got this sort of thing. So again, here's this story, right? It's a 1/3 situation. So this one was a degree 3, this is degree 3. They've got 1 friend on, so they switch on. This is a degree 4, but now it has 2 that are on. It was resilient in the first time step, just to recap. So it switches on now, 1 out of 2, so it turns on, and now this one has 2 out of 3, so it definitely switches on, and then finally we get to this. So we have to be able to model this, and when we think about this, if we just sort of plant ourselves at this node, and we'll be able to say not just a specific node, but we'll say all nodes of degree k. That's our thing. There are no correlations in this. The only thing we're specifying is the degree distribution. So we'll start at a node of degree k, and then we'll have to think about what could come in, right? So this is a degree 5 node. Because of randomness, then each edge that's coming in is effectively the same in terms of how we characterize it, right? So there's some probability this edge is on at time t. It's the same probability for this one, and the same probability for this one, and the same probability for this one and this one. It will always be about edges, yeah.
Probably a really silly question, but
Please ask silly question. I will give you a silly answer. Say it again.
So, you say as long as there's enough randomness. So this is valid for any degree distribution.
Arbitrary degree distribution, yep. Yep, and then we do that wiring up thing.
So
Yep.
delta K 49.
Yep.
50 nodes into that.
And then the thing, yeah, so you know how that's a beta lattice or a Cayley tree. And then it will be about like where this initial fraction. Absolutely will work, yes.
It makes sense that it would just.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, right? So we're really, we could be in the middle of this giant component, which we will be, for things that really switch on. We're in the middle of a big giant component. It has giant loops in it. There are big loops in it. It is a big mess, but there are no local ones, so we can do this story very well. And we had this picture. It's more complicated, but it's the same idea: marching in, 1/3 again, and then this one turns on. So again, in this case, now we've got the full picture. When we think about this one, right, it's got 9. I've said the wrong thing. It's got 10, right? So it's got 10 neighbors. This is a degree 10 node. At time 7, we have to think about what's the probability that an edge in this network after 7 time steps is on. An edge coming from a node. There's nothing. This guy's just connected to. So this guy's connected to this node with probability proportional to its degree. That's what we have, because random networks do have an architecture induced by this this kind of enhanced ability to connect to a node along edges, right, based on its degree. You can then change it. You can add correlations so that you're connecting to whatever kinds of nodes. That you can add all that sort of stuff, but it would still have to be random in the sense that this one's connected to this one, and then there's another story for this one, another story for this one. There's some correlations as you go out as a result, but this is otherwise, correlation free. Okay, so. Right, so there's no inactive, once they're on. It's not just the threshold model, right, which has been a big deal, but it's arbitrary, so this is pretty good. We're going to get the whole time evolution, which is terrific, so sort of a free set of tofu knives. And we're going to get the probability that a degree node of degree k switches on at time t. Really, it's quite elaborate, right? Okay, this is good. And that's true. We can actually do it for a specific node. That's fine. But that's really, we're going to do degree k, because that's all we sort of know about nodes. Yeah, it's pretty weird. Yeah. And we can do asynchronous updating. We're going to be on there's a clock, right? And there'll be some really nice problems for you guys to work on at the end of this. Okay, again, I just want to say this again. It's a taking off thing. If we've got a single seed, it's about this vulnerable thing in random networks. This one switches on. If this takes off, you need to have all these nodes nearby that get switched on by one of their neighbors being on. They're vulnerables. You have to have this big enough set of that for it to take off. And then, so this is whether it takes off. This is the probability, possibility, those pieces. And then the other end of it is, how far we actually end up is really this kind of contraction story. Like, do you get to that node? We're going to point to all these nodes in this network and think about what's the probability that it gets switched on at some point. At any point in time, and then as t goes to infinity, there'll be some fraction of these guys on, some fraction off for degree k. Cool. So it's a very charming thing. I mean, I guess, well, this is just, I'm saying this again, but I'm going to give you pictures. Yeah, so, because I did have a lot of words there. So, yeah, this one switches on at time 0, just with an exogenous thing, right? This is just you flipping this coin that says phi 0 on it, so it's switched on. At time 1, it can only turn on based on what these characters have done. And at time 2, it's here, here, and here that matters. All right, that's what all this says, basically. Yeah, and this is what I was trying to illustrate. For these random networks, these edges all have the same story. There's nothing special about them, right? You're a node here. You've got degree 5. All we can say about these edges is, with some probability, right, kpk divided by the average degree, that it's connected to a degree k node. So we just have to kind of go over all those possibilities, right? This could be degree 1, degree 3, right? And then given its degree, then we'll say there's a phi of t here, a phi of t. Well, I haven't said that yet, so let me get to that. Okay, here it is. Theta of t. Right, so we have phi for nodes. Phi is going to be the fraction of nodes that are on. We'll have phi of kt, which will be the fraction of nodes of degree k that are on at time t. And then we'll have this piece, which is really just whether an edge is infected or not, coming from an infected node. So thetas, right? And as usual, we get everything from edge to edge stuff, right? So the edges solve everything, and then we figure out whether the nodes are infected. So does an infected edge beget more infected edges? Okay, that's the expansion thing. An infected edge begets more infected edges, but now we're contracting, so we're trying to see if this edge coming in, well, there's a bunch of edges on the other side. How many of those are infected? What's the probability that they're all infected? What's the probability that this one actually switches? We have to kind of enumerate overall possibilities, right? It has degree 17, so many could be on. There's some probability that we've got these B things here, right? These B's are our probability that you switch on, given you have degree K and you have J infected neighbors. So that's this little matrix that we're going to have that's specified. All right. Okay. Let's walk through some more things. All right. Don't break. Okay. So, as I said, it's a degree. We're thinking about degree K nodes. What's probably that's active at time t. So it could have switched on at 0, 1, 2, 3, up to t. We've got these pieces. So we had BK1, and that's what we were focused on for vulnerable nodes, right? It meant one of your friends is on. You've got degree K. This is the probability that you switch on. So now this is the probability you switch on, given that J of your friends are on. Okay, so we're going to start with this. Okay. It's just set, so it doesn't matter what your degree is, because this is exogenous. It doesn't matter, right? We're just going to sprinkling infections. So we have this, that's our initial condition. Good. All right, let's think about the first time step. So these sorts of things pop up all the time, right? These kinds of structures. This is probably that J of, so this is initial node, it's probably that J of its friends are on. It's just been one time step. So the only way that those friends could be on is that they were initial seeds, right? So that means for J of them to be on, each one had to have flipped that coin that had phi 0, that weird coin that has phi 0 on it, all of those were successful, and all of the others failed, right? So J were on, K minus J were off, and then there are K choose J ways to do that, because they're all labeled. These nodes are labeled. So that's the probability that J are on. Yeah. That's one piece. So again, we're kind of contracting in around a node, and then we still have this. Probably the node in the middle was on at time t, this guy, right? That's still phi 0. We have the probability that it wasn't on is 1 minus phi 0, right? So we have to do these two things. So if it was on, we don't care about anything coming in, right? We're only worried about whether it was off. Right. And then combining everything, we have these pieces. So we're going to have probably that it's on at time 1 is the probability that it was on at time 0. And then you have to probably that it was not on, right? And then the probability that it switches on in that next time step. So this is the probability that you have J friends on, and then this is the probability that you get infected if J friends are on. Your degree K node, J friends are on. Two pieces, right? So structure, and then, well, it's more than structure. It has the infection in it. Right, that's just one time step. So this is a valid thing. So it's not quite here yet, but what we're going to get to is there'll be a theta of t on this side and a theta of t plus 1, and this is going to be an iterative map of the interval, which is for chaos fans everywhere, just totally great. Let's walk towards that.
So BKJ, I know we could solve for BK1 earlier, like based on the network. Can BKJ also be an exogenous variable?
So it is specified. It is specified. Yeah, it is. It's specified, right? So it's something about, you just specify it. You could derive it from, there are all sorts of ways to kind of measure it, but essentially it's going to be this matrix, an infinite matrix of sorts, but K equals 17. There's a B0, a B1, B2 up to B17, right? There's a 17, 17. You can't have more than that. So you have this set of pieces, yeah. So it's a, what do we got? It's a lower triangular infinite matrix with zeros over here, yeah. Countable. All right. So that's one step, right? So now, this is good. So this is, we know what's the probability of degree K node is on at time 1. So now we have to go out one more time step. Yeah. So let's do that. But we have to think about this. We're going to go to the edges now. So we need to know what the probability that an edge coming in at time t, right? So after time t, what's the probability that this guy switched on and this edge is on? I mean, it could have switched on at any point before then, but this edge is on. What's probably that edge is on? So we're going to have theta of t. And you have this thing to start with is that theta of 0, what's probably that an edge coming into this central node is on, has to be this initial probability of infection. Right? So you look at the node next to you, the probability that it was on at time, that it switched on at time 0 is this pre-specified exogenous probability. So that's the probability that this edge is on, infected, right? To start with. It's just so we have the two initial conditions match up or the same. So that probably any edge in the network, you go to a node and look at an edge coming in, the probability it's on is the same as the probability of nodes being infected in the first place. So let's get its little iterative thing. Yeah, so this is going to be for t, right, in general. We have a similar kind of t equals 1 thing. This we'll talk about it for node I, so this is not a, is that terrible notation? I think it is, yeah. Yeah, okay, sorry about that, I'll fix that up. That should be something a bit better than that. Yep, that's not good. Yeah, that's not right. Theta I1. Okay, this really should be like a superscript I. It's node 402. Okay, probably that's on this node is on. Well, it's probably that was on in the first straight away, and it's probably that that failed. And then it's probably that it switches on with j friends on, and here's its degree properly here, k sub I, that's good. And then we have the same story here, right? So you need j of its friends to be on. It's cumulative, right? So if it switched on before that, is that right? That's not the right way to say it. I have to think about that. It's cumulative, yeah. All right, this is, so the edges are special things. They're not tied to degrees or anything like that because it's a pure random network, right? So the probability that an edge is infected at time t is going to be this theta t. We're just going to have a sequence of those, and we need to see how they evolve. But given we know what they are, that's how we get our nodes probability of infection. And then we can average over all nodes, right? You multiply this by a pk, right? Because this is what happens if we put a probability of k here. It would be k sub I. I'll fix this up. And sum over it. You put it here and sum over it, you just get a 1 times this guy, and you put it here, and we'll get this overall thing, which is phi of t plus 1. This is the fraction of all nodes that are on, right? Because we're averaging over these individual cases, and the sum comes in here and sticks here. So we get a couple of sums, it's good. Okay, so that's the, given we know this thing, the edge probability of infection, this is the node probability of being infected time t plus 1. So we really need this story. We need to see how these evolve, and that's the next piece here, right? We're going to compute theta of t. Oh, it's very exciting. Okay. Similar kind of thing, but now we get this, you know, the strange friends business going in there. So let's just do one time step. So theta of 1, the probability that an edge is infected at time 1, well, it could have been infected at time 0. The node that it's coming from was infected at time 0. If it wasn't, then we have this story. It looks very similar. This is the probability that the node you're looking at along that edge has degree k. That's our classic. Actually, it's qk. We talk about r a lot, but this is qk. What's the probability that has k friends? And then you need that, we're going to look at the k minus 1 other friends. Look at them. So there are these possibilities. 0 to k minus 1 of them could be on, and that's what this is, right? J is the probability that those characters were on in the first time step, initially. The rest of them have to be off, so k minus 1 minus j, they're off, and this is our binomial. And then this is the probability that your friend over here who has k friends, has j other friends that are on, has switched on. So that's this piece. So it's similar to what we had before, but now of course we have this amplified probability here. So we've got these things. Here's our qk. If you can read through these things, is what I just said basically. Yeah. So we can generalize this just as we did for the for theta, the probability that a node of degree k is infected, and you end up with these two pieces. Whoop. Okay, so let's try to unpack these things. This was, we'd written this one down before, so there's a lot of stuff going on, but let's see it again. Edge is infected, edge is not infected, j of them are infected, k minus j are not infected, k choose j ways to do that, right? We're coming in around a node. bkj, yeah, is probably that a node of degree k with j friends on is then infected. We have to sum over all the possible degrees that a node could have, and then we have these two pieces. So these are the social effects, and this is the thing. This is the initial switching on. And we have an initial condition, right? So that theta of 0 is, phi of 0 is phi of 0, and theta of 0 is phi of 0 as well. And so that's the initial condition there. Basically the same thing, but here's your friend's degree distribution, and there's some slight modification here because we're only going to talk about k minus 1 other friends, and then, but it's still bkj. So you can iterate this. So let's work, we're going to have to figure this out. We're going to iterate this. Put in theta of t, you get out theta of t plus 1. So this is a little thing you can just build and iterate. Right? And you iterate that thing, and then once you want, well, eventually you just stick it into here. You get something that starts to asymptote, right? Starts to go towards some theta of infinity, and then you just stick it into here. Or you can make a fixed point equation, right? So you just say theta infinity, and solve it. And that's possible to solve for some things, right? Maybe you can do that. But essentially it's a, this is y equals some, so you're trying to see when it hits the y equals x line. How are we doing? All right, let's see how this plays out with some models. Now they were interested in this paper about fractional seeds, right? So instead of one seed, which has been the story we've thought about, it matters, what happens with one, you've got some fraction of an infinite random network that's turned on, which is very similar. It means you've got these patches of the network where there's one locally that's turned on, and the next ones are a long way away. But their effects will slowly come in when you start to think about long term. You have to think about those isolated seeds way, way, way out in the horizon. If you're going to switch on eventually, they have to somehow get towards you. Okay, so we have to remember a few things. There's a couple of pieces that are translations. This is straight from the paper. So R is this uniform threshold. So we had this story before. We called it phi star. And Z is, it's not an N, that's a Z. That's your average degree of a random network. So pure random networks, we're varying the average degree. And we've got this set of cascade windows here, right? So again, we have, so the blue one, the blue curve here is the original model when you have one seed. This is Duncan's original paper. That's the blue curve. If you then, in this case, it's going to be 0.01. So 1 in 100 nodes are on randomly. That gives you the simulations of the colors, right? So this is the final size. So you can see that that's what that is. And then this is the fit to this thing, that little purple dashed line, which has a tiny little blip there, which we can get to later, but it's pretty good. So this approach does very well, and you can see. And so here's a slice. This is for initial conditions of 10 to the minus 3, 10 to the minus 2, and 0.5 times 10 to the minus 2, and 10 to the minus 2. That's this example here. So we're varying the average degree, and I have to think what the uniform threshold is. Not written down, is it? I need that. Doesn't really matter, but basically it's a slice through here. I think it must be close to that 0.181. So it's a slice through here. This is the final size of the spreading, which they're interested in. Same story, right? We've got a random network, we're thickening, we're making it more and more dense, nothing spreads if we've got an average degree less than 1. This is a very important thing about Erdős-Renyi, right? It's no giant component. And then all of the final sizes go quickly to this nasty situation where everything gets infected. This is just this threshold model. This is the single seed case. This is where you have it would be 10 to the minus 3, 0.5 times 10 to the minus 2, and 10 to the minus 2. Right? More seeds. It's making it more and more likely that they'll be spreading. So even though there's not one of the big result we had before was the vulnerable giant component disappeared here. That was critical. That was essential to whether it could spread or not. Right? You needed a giant component, no matter even if it's sort of macroscopically small, it's a giant component. You need a giant component of vulnerables, which is our critical mass. If that thing started, right, you started in it or something near it with a triggering node, then there was spreading. Turns out that, in fact, that's not essential if you start to sprinkle some infections around. So that's a sort of important departure. So that's not a crucial thing. So this is a very fine result, actually. I don't think it was appreciated probably. It ended up in Physical Review E. It should have been Physical Review Letters. And it makes sense that eventually, I mean, of course, if you turned everyone on at the start, then boom, right? Okay, so that's pretty good. So it's a nice bit of work. It is the threshold model. Then they started to play around with some other goodies. But let's get a few things. So one thing we want to do is go back and find what happens as you make this cascade condition, determine the cascade condition as you tend the initial fraction they're on to 0. Right. Yeah. So now we have this map, and I've sort of written it down more simply here, right? So the edge, an edge at time t+1 is infected, depending on the probability of the edge being infected at time t, and whatever the initial seed fraction was, right? So this is an iterative map. We're sending something between 0 and 1 to something between 0 and 1. It's a slight departure from their notation, but this is all right. So if there are self-starters, so I've taken this whole, let me go back to here. Okay, the thing we're looking at this function, we're calling this whole blob here, including that thing, this whole blob here is this g function, right? So it's possible if you look over here, if you put j equals 0, that means none of your other, right? We're looking at some node, none of its friends are on. You can make this, you know, usually we'd sort of think that's 0, right? That's fair enough. But it could be a self-starter, so we can set these numbers to anything we want. If we wanted to look just for giant components, we'd make it 1 because we don't. Right? Okay, so this could be a self-starter, right? It has k friends, 0 on, but with some probability it actually turns on. Yeah, whatever it is. All right, so we can allow that. And there are, because it's k equals 0, 1, 2, 3, obviously you don't connect to k equals 0, but k can be anything. So there's a vector of these that might be non-zero for j equals 0. Okay, so that's what is here, right? So bk, j equals 0. So we set all of the other b's, we leave all the other b's there. Let me say this properly. We're really, that's tricky, isn't it? Why haven't I got phi 0 here? Feels like they should be right. Phi 0 is with. You can have phi 0 equals 0. You can do that too. Right. Okay, that's true. So we're going to set some fraction on. That's fine. But we're going to say that the. I don't really like that either. That can't make sense. This really should be 0. That should be 0. Right, so nothing's on to start with. Nothing's on to start with. And the first mapping, if this thing is not equal to 0, then, or enough of these are not equal to 0, this is of course some positive thing, this is fine. Then, and this is simply greater than 0, then it takes off. And I'll show you on a proper map in a second what I mean. But let's put phi 0 into this. So 0 is here. No, it's this one. 0 here, there's a 1 here. And all of these disappear, right? There's a theta here. Set theta to 0. Everything disappears. There's theta equals 0 is fine. This is just a 1. Theta equals 0 here means it's 0 everywhere, except when j equals 0. When j equals 0, this is a 1. Right? So j equals 0 means that this isn't here really, and you've got this piece to the power of k minus 1 because you're saying they're all off. Saying they're all off. Okay, so this is the part that remains when you set theta equal to 0 because everything disappears, so we just have the j equals 0 case. Only the j, right? Only j equals 0 survives. Set theta t to 0, or theta naught to 0. Everything disappears except when j equals 0. So this sum disappears, it just becomes j equals 0. This sum stays here. We're going to put a 0 here. This is a 0, but this is 1 minus 0, so it's just 1 to some power. So this goes to 1. This is a 1. K minus 1, choose 0, 1. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So the only things that are left is this piece and this piece. Is that okay? I know I'm maybe belaboring that. Okay, so that means we've got the sum on the outside and bk0 is the only thing that survives. So if that thing is greater than 0, then it takes off. And what this is going to be like is, and I'll have it in a little bit, really what this is, okay, so this is theta, theta of t plus 1, right? This is our map. And so we've got some, of course, here's our fixed point line. And this is going to be the case when you have something like this. This is really what it is. So if this is, right, this is 0. So the first time step, you start with 0. It maps straight to something that's non-zero. And then it could take off, right? So then it could take off. So it might be right, like this, boom, boom, boom. It would take off. So that's how the self-starter manifests. It manifests in this part. And then the thing we'll come back to is we're worried about this kind of thing. We saw it before, but in a different context. It could be 0 at the start, right? So nothing starts for free. That's fair enough. And then the question is whether the slope is above 1 or less than 1, right? So if the slope is above 1, we're going to take off. If it's less than 1, we're going to stop. So this function in here is g of theta of t phi 0, semicolon, right? That's what this is. I'm going to make it a red thing. Sorry. Silliness. Okay, good. Good. So that's this guy here or this guy here. So there are these sort of two possibilities. The first is simply there are self-starters. It's going to take off. It might not get very far, but it'll take off. And then there's this possibility of, if there are no self-starters, of how fast does it take off? All right. Okay, so this is here what we're going to talk about is what we'll need to solve for is the first derivative evaluated at 0. Greater than 1. This is spreading, occurs. Spreading takes off. Which is cool. I know, all right. I think it's great. It's very exciting. Okay, let's get this piece. Okay. So there's that. We didn't really have this before with the Watts model. It just didn't really think about that as a possibility, but there it is. And let's say that this is just equal to 0, right? Now we're worried about the slope at 0, right? So the sum of this. So theta of 0 is a fixed point, meaning that, right, g of 0 here is equal to 0, which is the second, which is to say it's the second thing, right? This is a fixed point right here. Then we're worried about the slope. We have a small initial seed and we're worried about the slope. So again, we're setting this value 0 in there, and let me think about this. Yeah, this is a calculation for you guys to do. You have to take the derivative, set phi equal to 0. You should be able to see what is probably going to happen, right? There was a theta to a k minus 1 something with a j. Differentiate it. The one that gets picked up is the k1. So this is back to this vulnerable story, right? So in this limit, a very small seed, we get the same. So this is the same result that we had. We've got it in various ways. We've got it through generating functions. We got it through a very simple physical argument. This isn't a physical, this is a slope of something. That's probably connected to a degree k node. That's how many other friends it has. And that's probably that node gets infected. All right, so great. Good. But let's elaborate these things. Okay, fine. So that's what we have. So we have to have, so if the function is greater than 0, some things are on for free. If it's an unstable fixed point at 0, then cascades are always possible. How far, their size then depends on the rest of G. So this is the nice thing, we actually get completely everything. So we have a, it's also possible to have a non-vanishing seed, which of course is the sort of motivation for this work. So that's a different business. So now we're going to start, this is really kind of cool. So now this is, we've got some function G, here's theta of t plus 1, right, that's a 1 and that's a 1. So maybe now our function looks like this, whatever it is. And so the slope is greater than 1, so it takes off, things take off, boom, 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 boom. And this will be the final size, or this is not the final size, this is theta infinity, which is the end relative abundance of infected edges in the network, right? They slowly accrue, takes off quickly at the start, and that fraction goes up to whatever it is, and that's your, from that you get the final fraction that are infected, right? This is about edges. From this we get, not theta, we get 5 infinity, right? Okay, there's going to be a few more graphs so you can see how this works. And some strange things, okay. Okay, so it's more complicated in this case. You can get some weird things. So if it has a stable fixed point, it's also possible for things to take off. Right. I'm going to show you this picture. Let me show you this picture. Okay, it's really weird. So now it's possible you can have this. This is theta of t plus 1. So let's imagine that we have a curve that looks like this. Okay, so it's a stable, this is a stable fixed point, right? So if you start close to it, so small things, they're always going to die out. Boop, boop, boop. It's a little critical mass model. But if you start with some initial condition that's above that, then it takes off. So that's where the little corrections come for in that map, actually. So this is very sneaky. Boom, 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 boom. So now you have to know about the first, you have to find this first unstable critical point, unstable point. What am I saying? Unstable, what is that? Fixed point. Yeah. You have to find that position, and then you say, okay, everything above that is whatever. A really weird thing is, though, that this function is actually dependent on the initial fraction that are infected, right? Must remember this. G depends on it like this. G theta, right? So theta of t plus 1 is equal to g theta, but built into it is, this is built in. So if you can't just say, oh, let's choose phi 0 wherever we want. As you do that, it changes this function. So it's not quite, right? It's not quite as simple as a sort of a chaos thing, which you're used to. You just say, oh, you know, it's this and this. Yeah, the phi 0, where you start, it also dictates the shape of this thing. So that's a bit of a funny tuning. All right. The suffering continues, obviously. Okay, so that's what this is saying. It's a tricky, but it's a subtle point, but it's sitting there. So you can have a stable fixed point, but as long as you start further out past the first unstable fixed point, there will be spreading. So that's a tricky thing to deal with. All right. So here are some examples. I want to draw some before we go to them, but here we go. So if this is our G function, then yes, takes off, right? Slope is above 1. This is our G function, then things disappear up until the first unstable fixed point. Stable, unstable, stable, unstable. Always goes back and forth. And then above that one, actually, this is a stable point that's going to attract anything above it, right? And below it, unless it's down here. And then this is the case that we talked about to start with, where there are self-starters, right? So it's going to take off and get to here, and that will be it. So in principle, there's all sorts of final states that could happen depending on your function. Right, this thing could wobble around, depends where your initial condition is, but that also governs the shape of this thing. Weird. Okay, so it's going to be the nearest, is that true? So the nearest stable fixed point, either above or below. Yeah, that's true, right? Unstable, stable, it goes to here. Stable, unstable, goes to here. And that's true in general. So it's essentially the nearest, yeah, that's a good thing. All right, we always have the alternating of stability. The form, again, the form depends on phi 0. Yeah, so it dictates the form and where you start. But this is right, if you've done chaos or you've seen these kinds of maps, this is like, yeah. It's not producing, right, these things are switching on or switching. Now I have to think about this, right, because these edges aren't supposed to switch off. Okay, I'll have to think about it. Maybe I've lied to you. Yeah. I guess that's true, right? So you're seated, but you will, okay, but you'll switch off if no one else is on, right? No, that's weird. No, that's not right. No. No. Okay. Okay. All right, let me think about that. It's very tricky. Decline, now I feel very silly. Decline of infection. How can it go down?
Well, data equals one is just the new, right?
What's that? It should be the top, it's cumulative, yeah.
So theoretically, it shouldn't go down.
Yeah. All right, I have to think about that. What am I saying? All right. Okay. I'll think about it and we'll see what we do. Okay, so this is a, let me get this right. Yep. That's probably all we need to say about all this. So, okay, so now we've got thresholds again. The previous one, fixed thresholds, everyone had the same. So now there's some Gaussian, right? You've got a little spread. There's a mean 0.2, so 1 in 5, typical thing, right, is vulnerables. Nodes up to degree 5, but then we're going to make it a little more resilient. And then have a spread around it, right? So there's some Gaussian spread around it. Okay, so this is a weird example of what could happen. So there are self-starters because we have a Gaussian, so there's going to be some part of that tail that's less than 0. So you can just say negative thresholds that mean that you turn on. If you have a negative threshold, you just switch on. Right. That's kind of how they're building that in. So now you can get a phase transition for low average degree. So let's think about how that works. So this is a slice. This is average degree here. It's a slice through here, and or different parts of this thing. Right. So here's the case. So this is the lower threshold, higher threshold, and then more resilient. Correct. So what's happening is this curve is bending, right? So the more connected, you have effective spreading. The more connected this thing becomes, then you get this thing popping like this, and you get a discontinuity here. All right. So yeah, 0 is not a fixed point. It always takes off. So you get this kind of madness. Eventually, so this is going to bend through as we move the threshold. It's going to turn around, so now we get a bifurcation here appearing, right? And then coming in from infinity is something which will eventually hit it. and merge, right? So for small things taking off, it never gets very far, right? But in this intermediate region, it takes off and becomes enormous, but it's sort of stopped here and stopped here, and that's sort of pinching it in. Okay. Saddle bifurcations, yeah. All right, so maybe we can talk about this some more. I'll give that as a kind of a problem set thing, but it's to do with how these functions are moving around, right? So these G functions. So what can happen, for example, is, let me show you this. So you can have this kind of thing. So here's right, it could be like this. And then as you tune things, it starts to move above, right? So this is a case where everything takes off, for example. Boom, boom, boom. It might do that. Sorry, that's not quite right. Here's your initial thingamajig, and it's going to go down, 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 and there's some sort of finite size here. But if this thing moves above, then you get this appearance of two fixed points. One's unstable and one's stable. And so anything starting above that unstable one will now go upwards. So there's a subtle thing that can happen here. All right. And that's what happens in this simulation. All right, that's fine. I think we're pretty good. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just ignore that. Okay, so you've got this synchronous update story. They're just given by those maps, and we have to think about them switching off. Yeah, I'm not happy about that. Asynchronous, then you can play around with this. Some fun things. You can just say there's probably that you update at a given time. That's a way to do it. That's not bad. As it goes to 0, then they sort of start to become basically independent, right? Because the probability that anyone near you turns on or updates goes to 0. And then you can sort of talk about these things again. So this is a nutshell for it, which will be a good place to stop. So lots of things about generalized random networks. I know we've gone a long way into it. The threshold model has this kind of core idea of vulnerables, critical mass, which we can solve for. We know, and you saw this in Pox, you know that as you sort of generalize to group-based networks and other kinds of things, or in this case, as we've seen here, probably as you move to having a distributed set of seeds, then the vulnerable story doesn't matter as much, right? Things can spread. Generating functions, yes, you can do all sorts of good things with them. We know they're opaque. They take you into a strange world. It's possible we'll come back to this and just talk about a physical story again, but I think we're pretty good. We have to get through assortativity. That's a big piece. Okay, and then you can generalize these things, and this is fine. So it's again, all these things are starting points. Degree correlated, modular, bipartite kinds of things where there's still lots of randomness. So the mechanics can be handled, but the structure is accommodated very nicely as well. So you can get the single seed stuff out. And then there are many other models that are floating around. There are voter models, like what are other people doing, which basically all turn out to be very similar to each other. There's some of the stuff that Kaufman did with NK, Boolean networks, Ising model kinds of things. So there's lots of other connections. But I think this is a good place to stop for this section. And the next stuff will be, the very next stuff will be things like assortativity, right? There's correlations between nodes. And then centrality, which is which nodes are the most important. Lots of different measures of that. Gives you page rank for Google and that sort of stuff. And then that moves out to helping us understand things like structure detection, which is a vast piece of work. And it's all sitting now in your network X or whatever. You press a button. There's still a lot of fighting about whose thing is the best. But it's a really kind of key core thing to be able to do. We've got a big system. What's its shape? And so that will occupy us. And then I'll have some sort of fun things towards the end of the course. But one more assignment, and then you guys can sort of just really go on your projects, and we'll focus on that. All right, I think that's good for today. We have office hours, and there are a couple of assignments due tomorrow. Hopefully they're not as long as some of the others. But all right, thanks. All right, good.